opinion. It's good to see you guys this morning. We're starting a new series called A Blessed Life, and we're going to be talking about the first sermon of Jesus. And there's actually about 3 places they think this occurred. But I got online and looked them up, and they're all beautiful. I thought, all 3 of those are pretty good. In some places, it's like a plain. Another one's kind of, and they call it in the Bible the mount, so you kind of assume there's like a hill. One of them has almost like a hill that's pretty high up here, and then a low section. That seems to make sense. But no matter where it took place, the Sermon on the Mount has so many practical things in it. And we're going to start with the very first one, and we're going to unpack that today, and we're going to talk about this idea of depending on God. So I want to tell you something. You and I have no idea what the future brings. We tend to think that we're in control of life, and somehow we're fixing things. Sometimes we think by worrying about something that we're going to fix it. But the truth is, we have to recognize that we really are dependent on God. In Matthew 5:3, it starts out the first part of the Sermon on the Mount. And here's what it says. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. We're going to camp on this slide for just a minute because I want to point out a couple things. First of all, this word blessed is from the Greek. It's makarios, I think is how you pronounce it. But here's what's really cool, okay? And the Bible was written in Koine Greek, if you didn't know that. Koine Greek is like country Greek. It wasn't written in highfalutin Greek. It was written in country Greek. So those of you who feel like simple people, the Bible is just for you, okay? But anyway, but the truth is that this word to the Greeks, here's what it meant. It meant when you are wealthy, you don't have a care in the world. And so when Jesus says to them, blessed, or the other meaning of this is happy, happy are the poor in spirit, the Greeks who were sitting there would have went, what? Jesus took what the world thought and turned it upside down. They thought if you're wealthy, if you have money as your security, you don't have a care in the world. And Jesus looked at them and said, if you want to be carefree, recognize that you and I depend on God. You know, when people read this, they wonder, what does it mean to be poor in spirit? Poor in spirit means that we are fully... Poor in spirit means, the next slide, it's cool, I can see it now, I can see what they're doing back there. All right, poor in spirit means that we are fully, they fall asleep too, it's okay. Poor in spirit means we are fully dependent on God. Do you recognize your dependence on God? The truth is, you and I are not as in charge as we think we are. And I don't know if you've had a moment or a time in your life when you recognize that you did not control the universe. You were not God. Years ago, I was the athletic director at a school, Christian school, and we went to, our basketball team was really good, and we went to the district championship. Well, in the meantime, I had gotten bitten or something, had a allergic reaction to something, and they had given me antibiotics. Well, apparently I was allergic to those antibiotics. So I'd begun taking Benadryl, but then when we went to the finals, I felt better that day, so I stopped taking Benadryl. So we went to the final game. Our team won. We went to Quincy's restaurant. How many of you remember Quincy's restaurant? Okay, I used to work at Quincy's. This is the one in Melbourne I'm talking about. But I used to work at Quincy's, and that's where I began my pursuit of the Big Fat Yeast Roll, which those first 2 words, big fat, okay? Anyway, so I was down there, and I'm sitting across the table from the basketball coach, and he looks at me, and he says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I don't feel so good." The next thing I know, now there's over 100 students, parents, everything there. Next thing I know, they have pulled the chairs out, and I am laying, all the tables are moved, I am laying on the floor of a restaurant with a circle of students and parents around me. It was like they were getting ready to have a bonfire, you know, or sing Kumbaya. And so I'm laying on the floor, I cannot breathe. Now, I wasn't worried. I actually felt okay. I just felt like somebody had their thumb on my throat, but I felt okay until the paramedics came in, and the guy said to me, "Sir," which that should have scared me to begin with, but he said, "Sir, where? Sir, what's your name?" And I said, "My name is Eric and I couldn't remember my last name. See, here's what happens. When your brain begins to lack oxygen, you forget stuff. And that was the first time I realized I'm not getting enough oxygen, and it kind of made me nervous. So they started giving me shots and oxygen and all kind of stuff and taking blood pressure and all that other stuff they do. They got me on a gurney, they wheeled me into the ambulance, and we were sitting in the ambulance in the parking lot of Quincy's in Melbourne, and I looked over at the guy and I said to him, am I going anywhere? And he looked at me and said, no, sir, we're going to sit in this parking lot until we get you stabilized. I said, no. Am I going anywhere? And he looked at me and said, oh, no. Your vitals or whatever he said. I don't remember exactly what he said. He said, no, you're going to be okay, sir. We've got you. And I remember going and having to be in the ER and the principal coming in and he was playing with the oxygen and turning it on and off, going, man, this is great stuff, and all kind of stuff that you're not supposed to do, blowing up gloves. But I want to tell you something. There was not a thing I could do. I was totally dependent on everyone around me. There was nothing I could do. In life, so often, we feel like we have this sense of control. And here's what it does to us. It causes us to worry. It causes us to try to fix things. Now, I'm not talking about planning. Planning is a good thing. The Bible encourages us to plan. It encourages you to budget. It's not just going through life going, oh, whatever. Okay? But we worry about things or try to fix things that we can do nothing about. So we're going to look at this sermon. We're going to look at this idea of poor in spirit. And here's what we're going to talk about today. How do I do this? How can I become fully dependent on God? We're going to look at 5 key things in your life. And last night people came to me and said, I really needed that message. Now here's what I want you to know about New Year's. I've had people tell me, I actually had somebody tell me that it was evil to make New Year's resolutions. They told me that it was satanic or something. And I kind of looked at them and I went, what? Okay? And then other people say, well, I don't make them because after a few weeks, I don't do them. Listen, these things that I'm going to give you, I hope that these aren't just things that you write down on a list. Because the Bible is not about a list. Being poor in spirit is about recognizing, I can't make it to God. This sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, there are people who look at it as a moral teaching, but Jesus at one point says to everybody, be perfect. Anybody in here meeting that goal? No. Well, some people might think they are. Okay. But nobody is. And so what's the point of the sermon? The point of the sermon is to say, you can't make it to God. You and I can't get there. So that's why Jesus came to us. You're participating in the only religion in the world that understood that we could not make it to God. And God came to us, and He forgives us. So as we look at these things today, I want you to look at it in the light of, God, I can't even do this. Would you help me, through your Spirit, to be able to do these things? And here's number 1. Seek wisdom from God, not myself. Proverbs 14:12 says it this way. There is a way that seems right to the man, but in the end, it leads to death. Have you ever given somebody advice, or they even came to you for advice, and you gave them advice, and they walked away and did nothing that you told them to do? Oh, yeah. Have you ever seen somebody do something, and you tried to warn them, and they kind of looked at you like, what, are you dumb? Oh, yeah. How about this? I love to watch, and I try not to love it, but I love to watch America's Funniest Home Videos. Because I feel so smart. Because I watch this and I see the people who are up on their roof and they're saying, I can make it into the pool that's 15 feet away, right? And I'm thinking, when could that person ever jump? Even 10 feet, And of course, you know what's going to happen. And they jump, and what do? They hit right next to the pool, and you go, oh, and then you can't quit watching, right? By the way, I don't purposefully watch that show. I do what you do. I'm watching football, or I'm watching ESPN, and a commercial comes on, and I don't have the patience to wait the 3 minutes for the commercial, so I flip over and watch that for a couple minutes, and then go, oh, game should be back on, and flip back over, right? That's how we are. We want to be in control. And so we watch this, and we think, but I'm not that guy. We're not the guy who says, hey, hold my beer and watch this, right? There's going to be people, I've told people, what I don't want on my tombstone is, his last words were, what does this button do? Right? I don't want to be that guy. And the Bible says that there's a way that seems right to us. Listen, your friends that you warn, don't go out with that person. person. Your friends that you warn, I'm not sure you should marry that person. Your friends that you say to them, I don't know that I'd get involved in that. I think I would avoid that habit. I'd be careful. Your friends are not idiots. But there's a way that seems right to them. And when that happens to you and to me, nobody can tell us any different. Nobody can. Have anybody in here ever done anything they regret and you look back and you think, right? Everybody has. We've all done things that seemed smart. They seemed, oh gosh, this is going to be great. And then it's not. In Proverbs 3:5-7, the Message, I love this. Trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He is the one that will keep you on track. Don't assume you know it all. Run to God. Run from evil. So let me give you the first thing that I would encourage you to do. Spend time in God's Word this year. If you don't make a single other commitment in this year, you don't make a commitment to lose weight, you don't make a commitment to get healthy, you don't make a commitment to be nicer, whatever you commit to, By the way, try to be specific when you make commitments. We become what we're committed to, by the way, whether you want to or not. Don't be like Charlie Brown. You know what Charlie Brown would do, right? Charlie Brown would have target practice, right? He'd take his arrow and he'd shoot it at the wall. And then he'd go over and he'd draw the bullseye wherever the arrow hit, right? And a lot of us do that when it comes to life. We just do whatever comes natural, and then we go, hey, look, I'm doing a great job. Listen, it's okay to make plans. So here's the first one. Spend time reading the Bible. There's lots of ways to do that. Daily Bread has an app. It's 99 cents. I know that's going to break you, okay? But it's 99 cents, and they'll actually read it to you. So if you don't even want to read, you can push play, and this guy will come on and go, today's Daily Bread is about God. And then the lady comes on, I hope you've enjoyed Daily Bread. It's a great, right? And they have these perfect voices and everything. And you don't even have to read it if you don't want to, but spend time in God's Word. Listen, every week, I promise you that I will use the Bible every week because I'm not that smart. But I know who is. And God's Word points us to what's right. In James 1:5, it says it this way. If any of you lack wisdom, you should pray and ask God, listen to this, who gives it generously and graciously to all. I don't know about you, but I feel dumb sometimes. I just do. I feel like, man, you just don't have it together. But when you listen to God, He helps you. Let me tell you what listening to God looks like, okay? So we're on vacation, and we're playing Monopoly. Now, I know most of you don't like Monopoly. Monopoly is not my favorite game, but it's time with my children, so I play Monopoly. But you got to realize, I'm pretty competitive. So I'm playing Monopoly, and I want to win. I want to win Monopoly, right? So, which I never did. Kyle wins every time. But anyway, so we're playing Monopoly, and as we're playing Monopoly, we're going around the board. Now, we don't do the thing. I know some people give out the property at the beginning, and all that's cheating. But anyway, some people do that. We play where you have to land on the property and buy it, right? So we go around. The first time around, I land on chance and community chest. All the way around. Not a single property. My sons are rolling double twos, they're landing on everything. They're buying everything. I went around the board 3 times and had one railroad. And my sons have piles of property, right? And if I land on anything now, I'm just going to get... And so I'm sitting there, and here's what I realized. I'm going to lose. Why am I even playing? I should just walk away from this game. And I literally was contemplating going, you know what? You guys finish this game. I'm going to go relax. And I was just getting ready to say that, and it was like the Lord just tapped me on the shoulder. Eric, this message is brought to you by God. You ready?
Yeah, really.
Here's what He said to me. You ready? Eric, are you playing this game to win or to spend time with your kids?
There you go.
To win. Of course. I got to tell you that you talk about a paradigm shift. See, that's when you know God speaks to you. By the way, people come to me all the time and say, Eric, how do you know when God speaks to you? Let me tell you how you know when God speaks to you. If it's something good that you're supposed to do, that's not Satan. If it's something like, help somebody, that's not Satan going, you really need to be be nice to that person. That's not the enemy,
That's right.
and you're not even that smart. To be real honest with you, that's how God speaks to us. And it's those little things where you're sitting there, and here it is, one of the only times, and my kids, I can tell you, the day that I have my funeral, and my kids stand up, one of them is going to say, I remember my dad. I don't know why they're going to talk that way, but they are. I remember my dad playing Monopoly with us when we were on vacation, you know. And what they could remember instead was Dad going, I hate this game, and walking off, right? It's those little opportunities where we read the Bible, and we learn about God, and number two, we spend time with Him in prayer. Prayer means that you're sensitive to God. So even while you're sitting where you're sitting, you're praying for people. When somebody comes to mind, you pray for them. When something comes to mind, you say, God, is there anything you want me to do? You ask God to speak to your heart. You don't just go through life and let it happen around you. You say, God, would you guide me? Would you direct me? Would you make me sensitive to people? Lord, when I'm standing in line in my least favorite store that has a mart in it, the mart store, you know what I'm talking about? Lord, when I'm standing in line and there's only 2 cashiers and there's 4,000 people standing in line, Lord, would you help me to be sensitive to the people around me? Maybe there's a mom with a little kid that's freaking out that I can just smile at that little kid and maybe make their day. Or maybe there's somebody who wants to strike up a conversation. Lord, would you make me sensitive even in my busyness to do what you want me to do? Number 2, trust God for strength. Trust God for strength. Do you ever get weak? You ever grumpy, frustrated, irritated? You ever irritated for no reason? You ever wake up irritated? You just wake up in the morning and you're like, I am so irritated. You ever had that happen? I've done that. You just wake up and you're like, I'm in a bad mood. Why? Because we're weak. We're physical, spiritual, emotional people. And sometimes we get physically weak. I got in at 4 o'clock yesterday morning from North Carolina. I love to drive in the middle of the night. All my friends are talking about, we sat in traffic forever. I'm like, we didn't. Because at 3 o'clock in the morning, anybody who can't stay awake is just running off the road, and I'm just going right past them. Even the police aren't awake. But anyway, Isaiah 40:31 says this, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their, what's the next word? Strength. They'll soar on wings like eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. By the way, those of you who are starting to exercise, this is a great verse to memorize. Lord, I'm going to wait on you because I am running and getting weary. And if we apply that same idea of getting weary to understand that that's not always physical. Sometimes that's emotional. Sometimes we have a huge emotional thing happen. It's like lifting a heavy weight and we immediately know, I need God. God, I need you. This emotional weight is too heavy. But other times it's just little things. One little thing after another little thing, right? After another. And you find that you're frustrated, irritated. Hey, hope in God. God, I know that you can walk me through this. God, let me tell you something. God will walk with you in the dark times. No matter how deep it is, no matter how dark it is, God will always be with you. And sometimes you just have to take time in the middle of the worst situation and to say, you know what, God? I don't understand this, but I know you're with me. Listen to this next verse. Habakkuk 3:19. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. When you're climbing mountains, it's hard, but God gives you the strength to walk through the difficulties. You know, whether it's a divorce, bankruptcy, illness, hospitalization, somebody in your family who's sick, cancer, all kind of things that come at us. Jesus never said life would be easy. He actually said, in this world, you will have trouble. So if you have trouble, just know it's normal. Don't be like, well, nobody else has trouble. Everyone has trouble. Everyone. Everyone in this room struggles in some area, in some way. But here's the good news. You don't have to do it alone. He can give you his strength. Number 3, depend on his protection. Now this one goes out to all the people pleasers in the world. All right? Most of us want other people to like us. Every once in a while I run into somebody who says, I don't want people to like me. And let me tell you, those people, I have a very simple name for those people. Jerks. Okay? Everybody else, you don't want people to hate you. I love it when people hate me. You know, if somebody tells you that, run from them, okay? Because there's something wrong with them, right? We want people to like us, so what happens? Over time, you and I realize in life that there are people who just won't like you. And if you're a people pleaser, you'll think in the back of your mind, if I'm just nice enough, if I just do enough good things, if I just don't hurt anybody, if I don't offend anybody, if I live in perfection with people, then nobody will get mad at me. The most perfect person in the world was Jesus. People hated him. And so recognize that no matter what you do, now there's times that it's our fault that people are mad at us. Did you know that? There's times that you do something and somebody's mad at you and it's not like, well, what's their problem? But the truth is, even if you get it all together, there are people who won't like you anyway. David understood that. David was kicked out of his own kingdom by his own children. People mocked him. Even as he walked out of town with his army, there was a guy who mocked him. And here's what he wrote. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation, my honor, depends on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. There are times in life that people want to ruin your reputation, that they talk bad about you for nothing you've done. And God says, I'll be your defender. Just trust me. So when those times happen, turn it over to God. God, I trust you. Number 4, depend on his provision. Depend on his provision. Do you really trust God to take care of you financially, to provide for your needs? We live in the richest country in the world. The poorest person in here is in the top 1% of the world. You know, when we talk about the top 1%, everybody thinks the rich. You are in that. If you're the poorest person in here and you're collecting a government check, you're still wealthier than most of Haiti today. And so we have to remember this, but are we going to depend? The number one cause of anxiety is money. People are worried about money. People get in debt. They do dumb things. They use credit cards. We get in a hurry and we want to get ahead of life. So what do? So we buy a bunch of stuff that we don't have money for, and then we're anxious about it. Now, I'm not saying not to plan, but I'm saying we have to learn to trust God. If you want to know what you value, look at your checkbook. Look at where your money goes. Most Americans value cable TV. How do I know that? Because billions and billions of dollars are going to just television, much less entertainment. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, but look at your values. Do you actually give money to the things of God, or you just spend money on yourself? You can tell what you value by what you give. And don't just say, oh, well, I give my time, so I don't give money. That would be like your parents saying to you, hey, I provide for you, so I don't need to spend time with you. What? You would never say that to your kids. So depend on God's provision. Philippians 4:19 says it this way. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. You know, as a church, God has provided for us every year. We've met our budget. We've paid our bills. Every single year. And last year, it's miraculous. And God's taken care of us. I would love to tell you that I've never been worried. I'd love to tell you as your pastor, I just go, God is going to provide. But there's times I go, well, okay, God, if you don't provide, what are we going to do? God, if you don't provide, what are we going to do? And yet every year God provides, and he's provided again. Last year we met budget, exceeded budget. God's done that every single year. Number 5, wait on God's timing. I grew up in Miami. In Miami, US 1 is 10 lanes wide. 10 lanes wide, okay? 2 turn lanes, 3 lanes, 3 lanes. In some places, actually 4 and 2. But anyway, I remember sitting in a light down about 110th Street, I think, maybe 112th in Miami on US 1. And we were at a light turning left, and the light changed, and the guy started to go, and he got 2 lanes over, and the people started going, so he stopped in the middle of the intersection. Now, I was a kid. I probably was 10 years old. And I remember my dad going, don't go, stay there, don't go, stay there, don't go. And I watched this car. And he sat there, and he sat there, and he sat there, and he finally got impatient as these other 2 lanes are still going. He's blocked 2 lanes are still going, and he says, oh, I can't wait. And he pulls out, Somebody catches the front of his car at 50 miles an hour, spins his car around. I watched as his car then slides over to this lane and hits 2 or 3 other cars as it spins and finally comes to a stop. And my dad said to me, "Son, better to wait and get the slop knocked out of you." Never forget that. Because and here's what's wild is that car came to a stop and the light had changed. If he had waited just a little more. Yet we live life so impatiently. Abraham in the Bible was impatient. God said, "I'm going to give you a son." Abram said, "Hey, Sarah," and he ended up sleeping with one of his slaves and said, "Okay, God, I did it." No, that's not what I wanted. Psalms 31 says it this way, "But I trust in you, Lord. You are my God." Listen to this. "My times are in your hands." You ever waiting on God to answer a prayer? You ever want him to fix something now? I like the lady in the video. "God, give me patience now," right? That's us. We're impatient people. Ecclesiastes 3 says it this way. "He does everything just right and on time, but people can never completely understand what he's doing." Do you relate to that? "God, I don't know why you're not doing what I want you to do when I want you to do it." Psalms 27. "Wait on the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait on the Lord." Finally, I want to end with this. Here's a test. I want you to look at these 5 things. And how are you doing them? These are the 5 things we talked about today. I'm going to give you some practical applications. If you want to write these down, you can, or you probably can remember them. Number 1, are you seeking wisdom from God? How are you doing in number 1? Are you spending time in the Bible? As you go through your day, are you taking time to listen to God? Are you spending time in prayer? Are you praying for other people? By the way, if you want to change how you feel about somebody, pray for them. You got somebody you're mad at? Pray for them. You got somebody that hurt you when you were young? Pray for them. Now I'm not talking about a prayer where you say, "God, kill them," you know. But Lord, I don't know why this happened. And pray and ask God. Number 2, do you trust God for strength? Or are you trying to make it on your own? If you're worrying all the time, then you're not doing this. When you find yourself worrying, I want to encourage you to go back to God and say, "God, I'm not in charge. I trust you for my strength." Because all you're going to do by worrying is wear yourself out and give you gray hairs and a heart attack. Somebody said to me, "Worrying does nothing." No, it does plenty. It'll raise your blood pressure, tons. It does a great job of all that stuff. It's really bad for your body. So what do? When you find yourself worrying, realize, "Okay, God, I'm not in charge of the universe. Help me to trust you." Number 3, do you depend on his protection? Next time somebody says something on Facebook where they attack you, next time you're at work and somebody makes a little snide comment, next time you go over that memory of somebody hurting you, by the way, we all do that, right? We replay history thinking that it's going to change. Next time you replay history, realize it's not going to change and say, "God, you know the truth. You're my defender. God, you know what really happened and you will take care of me. You are in charge of how I look to others, and it's none of my business what they think. God, I trust you." Number 4, are we dependent on his provision? When you find yourself worrying about finances, say, "God, I don't know how this is going to work out." Now, truthfully, there's times where we have to take ownership and go, "Okay, God, I tried to get ahead of you, and I bought a bunch of stuff for Christmas for people that I should have never done," right? Would you forgive me and help me to learn how to budget, right? By the way, there's some great budget resources online. That might be a practical one for you. Number 5, finally, wait on God's timing. When you find yourself anxious, when you find yourself trying to help God, slow down, take a breath, say, "God, I don't know why I'm having to wait, but I will trust you in the waiting." I want to look at one last thing. We have a primary way that we express dependence as Christians. Jesus was dedicated as a child in the temple, but that was his parents' decision. Some of you were dedicated or even baptized as children. But when he got older, Jesus wanted to be baptized by his own will. To go and say, "I want to be baptized." You might be here today and maybe you've never been baptized. When I was in high school, I had been a youth leader for years. And I realized that I gave my life to Christ as a senior, even though I was baptized when I was 8 years old. And so I was baptized in college as a youth leader. I walked out and said, I've never been baptized as a Christian, but I had done that on my own. Here's what it says in the Bible. This is what happens in baptism. By the way, the word baptism literally means to dip. So when you have chips, you can have chips and baptism, right? Just so you know, it's kind of weird. All right, this is what happens in baptism. When we went under the water, we left the old sin behind, and when we came up out of the water, we entered into new life of grace. When we are lowered into the water, it's like the burial of Jesus, and when we're raised up out of the water, it's like the resurrection of Jesus. We're raised to a new life. Baptism doesn't save you. It's a symbol of dying to yourself and living for Jesus. Next weekend, next Saturday night, after our Saturday night service, we'll be having baptism. The service ends about 7 o'clock. I think we're going to have baptism about 7:15. If you want to be baptized, we probably don't have a sheet on the table yet. I don't care if we flip one over and write baptism on the top. You can sign up, give us your name so that we can email you some information and your email. That'd be great. And you can be baptized next Saturday as a step of faith, saying, God, I'm dependent on you. Baptism is an outward sign of what happens in our heart where we say, I give up. God, I surrender. I die to myself and I live for Jesus. And if you're here today and you've never done that, or maybe you did it as a child but you've never done it as an adult, I want to encourage you. Take that next step of faith, of saying, God, I'm dependent on you. Because if you don't do anything else this year, I want to encourage you to say, God, this year, I just want to be dependent on you. I want to trust you. If you're here today and you've never given your life to Jesus Christ, that's really the first step of walking in faith, is to say, Jesus, I need you. I'll be here after the service, and you can come to me and say, Eric, I want to give my life to Christ. I never have. I've known about him, I've gone to church, but I've never really surrendered my life to him. You can do that today. You can start out 2016 knowing that you've given your life to him. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, thank you for this morning. I thank you for your word and your power, your strength. Lord, I thank you for your protection. Father, I thank you that you speak to us, that you show us even simple things like paying attention to our kids or reminding us of what's important around us. Lord, I pray that our church would be full of people that are full of your spirit and sensitive to your voice, that you'd speak to us each day. And Father, as a church, we want to trust you. We want to walk with you. We thank you that you always provide. You always take care of us as a church, and you always take care of us as individuals. Lord, bless each one today. In Jesus' name, amen. We're going to have our time of giving. Giving is just a simple way. It's the reason God asked us to do it. It's a simple way of showing our trust in him. God, I trust you. So as you give this morning, whether you write a check or give cash or whatever, you just make a statement in your heart. God, I trust you. You're going to take care of me. Thanks for being here this morning. We have a great song to end the service. Thanks for being here.